Let's bring in David Nakamura, reporter for The Washington Post. Okay, David, so the president's now vowing to win a 16-year war. We didn't get a whole lot of specifics. What's different from his policy when you compare it to the Obama administration?
Well, Rena, we didn't get a lot of specifics. I don't even think that the president mentioned the specific number of troops that he is authorizing be increased. That was later sort of said to Congress separately. But the way that they're trying to package this is that it's a shift from the Obama administration, in that the Obama administration was very clear that they had a certain timeline for a withdrawal of U.S. troops, which was initially 2013 and then got pushed back. As we know, President Obama ultimately elected to leave a certain number of troops there for the next president to decide to do what's next. But I think most of the people I've talked to who are foreign policy experts say, look, this is not a major shift in policy, but it is important for this president because he's taking ownership of this war, and he is someone who, as he said last night, had initially, in his own instinct, said pull out entirely. He's not doing that. He listened to his military generals who said that would be a mistake.
Yeah, you kind of wonder if he gets credit for that. During the campaign trail, it was all about pulling out. That was his main focus there. I want to ask you, though, about why he feels so confident that he's going to succeed. This is a war that has been problematic for many administrations, several of the, Bush W and Obama. What's different here, and why does he feel that he can succeed with this strategy?
Well, look, he emphasized the idea that there's beyond troops, they're going to emphasize other levers of power, economic, diplomatic, especially on Pakistan. But this is just like with sort of China and North Korea. Leveraging Pakistan is not easy. It may be easier said in a public setting like this than actually done. Everybody tries it, but Pakistan has other motives. And I think that for the president, another thing he did not do last night was to set a sort of a measure of what success would look like. What is success? A reduction of fighting on the ground, sort of gains of territory against the Taliban, negotiating a peace deal with the Taliban at some point, which we're not yet close to. Those are sort of markers that you would say, okay, well, we can judge our success. He said we know success when we see it. But he's been very clear that he's not going to judge that by any kind of timetable. So it's not clear how one would expect this war to sort of ultimately wind down or when it would happen.
The fact that he was so critical of Pakistan yesterday, saying that they're going to push him to do more. How are the Pakistanis receiving that? How are the Afghanis? Have you heard from either side? And the Indians as well?
Yeah, this is a touchy subject. I mean, because he also did, as you said, talk about the Indians. He wrapped this as a full South Asian strategy. But these are countries that don't see things eye to eye, to say the least. And India and Pakistan both have interests in Afghanistan, very strong interests. And the Pakistanis have been known not only to sort of allow some terrorist groups sort of safe haven. We know Osama bin Laden was hiding out there for many years. But also has worked closely with the Taliban, especially in southern Afghanistan. And so it's not clear, exactly what levers the president's going to push that are different than past administrations. He has suggested a lot of financial aid to these countries could be, sort of looked at again if they don't follow through with some of the demands of the U.S.
Do we know, David, what exactly changed the president's mind on his thinking on Afghanistan?
I think, he got a real earful from H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, the Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. These are generals who he put in charge, as well as his new Chief of Staff, of course, John Kelly, all generals in the military who emphasize the need for not just a diplomatic or economic response, but an increased military response. And I think they're being careful to say this is not returning troops to the battlefield. These are going to be in support roles, training and advisory roles. But ultimately, those advisors want out. Steve Bannon, who people recall had just left the White House last week, was on the other side, saying we need to pull out, maybe use private contractors instead of U.S. troops. He was really pushing this America First idea that this is not a real core interest, and we need to focus on shifting some of those resources and interests and money to other needs at home. But ultimately, he left the White House for many reasons, and the president did listen to the generals.
It was interesting to hear the Republican reaction to his speech, McCain calling it a step in the right direction. But Senator Rand Paul says that the mission has lost its purpose. What do you make of the reaction you're hearing from the speech?
Well, I think a lot of people, and I've talked to some foreign policy experts, say, look, this is, maybe a necessary step, but it's also a step that's incremental and is not going to lead to immediate decisive change in Afghanistan. And so that means many more years of war, an unlimited commitment. Rand Paul is somebody who's been very opposed to this kind of interventionism. And even Trump, he ran against this kind of idea. This is an unlimited sort of extension of a war that's already gone on more than 15 years. And so I think that is some of the concerns you're hearing. But people like McCain and Lindsey Graham are others who say we need to be a little bit more hawkish and use our military might and other levers of U.S. power to sort of reshape some of these countries. Although the president himself was careful to say this is not nation building. We're going to attack terrorists. We're going to, really, it's all a focus on U.S. Defense and national security.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see exactly how this unfolds. I want to ask you about tonight, a campaign rally in Arizona. The president loves these campaign rallies. It also gives him an opportunity to sometimes go a little bit more off script. Not that he doesn't do that often. I want to ask you, what can we expect from this upcoming speech?
It's interesting. He's going to start. He's en route now, as you said, on Air Force One. He's going to start with a visit to a border patrol station in Yuma, where he's going to talk about immigration and some of the gains, as well as the need for a border wall. Yuma has 62 miles of border wall, officials said, and the president's going to talk about the need to fund more of that. And then he's going to go on to this rally. You know, what's interesting, we're about a year out from the campaign rally in Arizona, in Phoenix, where he had real sort of strong immigration speech that came a day after he had been in Mexico, sort of mending bridges with the Mexican president. And then he went and he sort of went on this harder script to the base and his core supporters, really, looking for their approval and talking really about sort of strict immigration, regulations that he'd be promoting. I think you're going to see possibly some of the same tonight. And, he had talked in an interview just a couple weeks ago that he was considering a pardon for the Sheriff Joe Arpaio there, the ex-sheriff, who became nationally renowned for his hardcore immigration views. And the White House has not said this might happen tonight, but you're going to see, I think, the president really appealing to his base. And last night he spent a lot of the speech at the military base talking about sort of the need for unity and the need to sort of accept each other for who we are as Americans, getting beyond some of his rhetoric in Charlottesville. The question is, will he return to some of those other themes tonight in an appeal maybe toward this base? I
want to ask you about Arizona's two Republican senators, Jeff Flake, John McCain. They've both been critical of the president. He's fired back. I mean, even supporting Flake's primary challenger. What do you expect from him tonight? Do you think he'll go on the attack?
He might. And, the Republican leaders are concerned about this because the president has been very critical of Jeff Flake in the wake of Flake writing a book that was critical of Trump and calling out other Republicans for not standing up to Trump's sort of leadership style and his divisive rhetoric. So the president has been critical. He's also been critical of McCain, and he's angry that McCain cast a very important vote against the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. So it's possible he'll do that, but he is under pressure, again, from congressional leaders and Republican allies in Congress not to do that, especially in their home state. It's a touchy issue, but, it is going to be in a room full of Trump supporters, as we know, and there also are expected to be a number of protests outside on the streets around the arena. So it's going to be quite a scene tonight. Our paper, for example, has 3 reporters there, and so, anything you can expect, maybe the unexpected.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be carrying it live here. David Nakamura from the Washington Post. Thanks for your time, David.
Thanks, Rena.